Hey guys, what's up? So, made a video about the Yorion control, blue-white control deck a few days ago, and that was kind of like my gonna be my, I guess, last video on it, because I've been playing that deck for a few months now, and, um, it's a good control deck, but it does have some issues. And like I mentioned, blue-white, while overall is a consistent color for control, um, some of the white removal spells aren't as good, and so by splashing in black, we're gonna have better removal spell, better card quality, but our mana base is gonna be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more inconsistent, especially in the 80 card deck. So we're gonna have to try to work around that and hopefully fix some of that. So with this build here, like I mentioned, I'll talk about the cards in a second and some of the decisions that I made. In which cards to keep and cut and change out. And I'll talk about the side deck. I kind of just finished building it. I'm thinking I might want one or two more rare cards to try out some cards in the deck. But right now it's not bad. I think the build looks okay. It's very similar to the blue-white control, except we're removing a bunch of the white cards that weren't that great anyways, or some of the blue cards that I didn't care for as much. And we're kind of keeping the core and replacing some of that with the black cards. And yeah, so it's a splash of black. If you take a look at our casting cost real quick, you can see it's still mostly blue-white with a bit of black in it. And yeah, we're still playing not many creatures at all. Um, so our only creature is gonna essentially come from Shark Typhoon and the Wandering Emperor, and obviously the mainlands. And we'll talk about all those in a second. So, all right, let's talk about our one mana spells going forward, and then we'll talk about each individual new cards that I added in and some that I took out. All right, so Fatal Push, one of the best cheap removal that we can have in the deck. It's better than Portable Hole, in my opinion. I like it because it's instant speed, and it can, in theory, kill something higher than 4 CMC. Like Portable Hole is great, and it works okay with like Yorion. Like if you Portable Hole a token and then you flash Yorion in, you can Portable Hole something else. But at the same time, I sometimes I just don't like it because it's kind of dead in my hand. I want something um, at instant speed where Portable Hole. The main weakness is that you have to cast it on your turn, so it doesn't answer everything I want it to answer. And I think Fatal Push is a pretty good answer to a lot of the small stuff in the format right now. Um, yeah, so it's worse in the sense that it won't capture something. Like, so if your opponent plays a Croxa, Portable Hole in a sense is a bit better because you can just take away that Croxa. They can't cast it again because you prison it. Where if you Fatal Push a Croxa, they have a chance of recasting it. So those are the trade-offs. But I think the instant speed definitely makes it worthwhile. Next off, Thoughtseize is a huge maybe in the deck, honestly. I still like Thoughtseize as a card in general, and it's I think it allows our decks to do something that regular blue-white control can't, and that's to interact with their opponent's hand. There's cards that sometimes can't be countered. There's cards that sometimes we just don't want them to cast, or we don't have a counter spell up. We can kind of get rid of a thought, or get rid of a threat from their hand, something like that, or at least gives us information, and how to play around certain things. The bad things about Thoughtseize is it's a terrible top deck, especially if you guys are in a resource top decking war. It's a terrible top deck. It can also kill you pretty quickly, especially if you're drawing multiple Thoughtseizes in your opening hands. Two to three copies maybe, and you have a shock land or something. You're gonna be down to like 12 life, by turn two. So it's kind of dangerous. But the trade-offs are pretty nice. And here I decided just to play three copies. I think you can maybe even cut it down to two. I decided to side the fourth copy into the side deck for now. I'm just gonna test it with this number. So I think three. It's like if I see it in my opening hand, I just want to see maybe one copy. Um, you know, And if I don't see it, hopefully, like if I don't see it in the early games, hopefully I just don't draw it at all or as often in the late game. So that's why I'm thinking between 2 to 3 copies might be a good idea. You either see it or you just hopefully don't see it at all. It's not a card that you want to play 4 of, because 4 of is, you have a good chance of maybe opening it in your hand, but we are playing an 80 card deck, so the variance is still going to be pretty high. In like a 60 card deck, 4 copies, you'll probably be opening at least with maybe 1 in your hand every 2 out of 3 games or something like that. Where we're playing an 80 card, it's kind of a mixed bag there. I'm not a mathematician, so I don't really know the the stats on you having this card in your opening hand in the 80 card deck at 3 copies. I just gonna play what I feel like is a decent number, and I think 3 copies gonna be okay. And this is probably gonna change. This is a prototype deck. It's not something I've ever tested. I never tested this deck out. I have zero idea how it works in Pioneer. I have a pretty good understanding of the deck when I was playing it in Historic, and back then, Historic before it migrated to Alchemy, and I did, get to Mythic a few times just using a pure, Esper control deck. Um, you know, back when Historic was just Historic and not like Alchemy and some other random stuff. And with the release of a bunch of like new black and white cards and Esper cards, recently I think it's a good time to come back to the deck and try out some of the new cards. Obviously, this time I'm playing an 80 card deck, so the numbers and ratios are going to be a little different. And I'm trying to combine both of my experience piloting, a regular blue white Yorion deck with a kind of a Esper deck. So combining the two, I think the variance is going to be really weird, but the numbers will kind of make sense hopefully as I play a lot of games and figure out the optimal ratios. But for now, this is what I got for Thoughtsies and fatal pushes. I didn't want to max out on the fatal pushes because I think 4 might be overkill. I wanted to break up my source of removal a little bit, which is why I'm playing March. Now March, it's a card that I may even just cut completely. I'm not too sure. I still like in the blue white control deck. I like March has been one of my favorite removal card, but it is expensive to use, and we have less white cards to discard for it. So I think just 2 is good. 2s will hit basically a majority of any kind of threats that we might encounter at a higher cost if we're not discarding for its effect. But I think two should be okay. And those are like the best 1 mana cards I think you can play in the format in terms of removal and interaction. So yeah, just a total of 8 cards here. Some people have done 4 Thoughtseize and 4 Fatal Push for the sort of the consistency factor, but I think that's just kind of overkill on that end, and I just want to kind of break it up and play just 2 March instead. Next off, Omen of Sea, pretty self-explanatory. Works well with Yorion, and just a great way to kind of fix your draws. Since we're on a 80 card deck, kind of helps you draw that land you need or draw that threat. Kind of scry through your deck. So 4 copy here is a must. Search for Skanta is a maybe, but I've seen other builds that have successfully played 2 copies of Search, and I've always, as a control player, at least in a slower format like Pioneer, Explorer, I think Search for Skanta is great. It kind of gives you like a late game win condition, especially when you're just both top decking. And yeah, it's a card that is hard to remove. If your opponent removes it, whatever's it, you ate up a removal card. But if you can flip this, the only other way they can really remove it is with Fill of the Runes. And well, yeah, if they fill the rune, that's unfortunate. But still, I think it's great to see it. If you see it, in your opening hand, it's great. And, you see it later, it's great. Just sometimes you don't even want to flip it. You want to just leave it just to filter through your draws and stuff like that. And I think 2 copies is the max you would ever play of this card. So obviously, if you play too many, then, it is a legendary enchantment, so you can't stack them. and it's a 2 mana do nothing card. So in a control deck that might be pretty expensive, especially if a format's too fast. You probably don't have time to play Search for Escanta. You probably be playing something else. But yeah, I think in this Pioneer Explorer format, I think at least having one copy is a decent idea. Next off, our best or second best counter spell is going to be Dolans Veto. I have always liked 2 copies. Any more than that, and I feel it's kind of dead. Because not a lot of decks in the format are creature based, so you're not always gonna Veto's not always gonna be live, and so I think just 2 is fine. Vanish Reverse is one of the best removal spells in the game, at least in Pioneer, just because it's 2 mana and exile basically any monocolored card. You can't hit artifacts, I believe, just 'cause artifacts aren't colored, and but majority of the threats in the format are colored. So I think 2 is great, especially in the 80 card deck. You can even play 3 copies if you wanted to. But I think yeah, this card is just really efficient. It's better. I think it's better than what's that card? Absentee. Faithful Absent. Sorry. It's way better than Faithful Absent. It exiles the card, and your opponent doesn't get anything back. So this is an upgrade to Faithful Absence, I believe, which is really nice. And it's kind of an upgrade to March also. Uh, but the only thing I like about March over this card is that March can hit, um, artifacts. You can hit like Cat Oven stuff like that, because there are some artifact decks in the deck or in the format, and this card is just kind of dead against those decks. And so I decided doing sort of like a 2-2 split here seems to be like a good compromise and kind of a good way to, you know, get a diversity of removal in your deck, which is good. I think it's better than stacking up on them, like stacking 4 copies of March or stacking 4 copies of Verse or Fatal Push. I think that's like a little overkill, and especially in the format right now where everything's kind of diverse. So it's kind of good to diversify your counter spells and to diversify your types of removal. And that sort of same topic, I like Drown and Lock as a counterspell also, and a removal. Now, obviously, in Pioneer, it's not as great because your opponent's graveyard is generally pretty empty. If they have Croxa or just in general, the format is like too slow. They don't have that much fetch lands, and so, by turn 2, 3, there's probably only like 1 card in your opponent's graveyard. So, I think 2 Drown is fine. It kind of replaces the Censor in a sense. I do like Drown because it's multi-purpose, but it is slow, and it doesn't, really fix your mana issue. If you're having mana issues, at least Censor can kind of help fix with that by cycling the card. But I think Drown is still a really good like Dimir counter spell, so I decided to play 2 copies, just have it in there. All right, so the 3 mana slots are going to be a little weird here. I'm still playing 2 Narsets. I still really like this card sometimes in some certain matchups. Um, especially decks that are cycling or you're playing against another control deck. If you can resolve a Narset, it really hinders people from drawing and stuff like that. So I don't know. I like 2 Narsets, and I still like blinking her back with the Yorion. So at least in my opinion, she does kind of conflict with your Void Wren and your Absorb here, because sometimes you just want to leave your mana open and not play it. So that's why I'm playing 2 Narset. It's like if I feel maybe late game or in the early games if my opponent can't remove Narset or they have no way, excuse me, no way of just getting rid of it, then slamming down Narset might be nice. And when I typically slam down Narset, I typically minus her to try to search for like a Supreme Verdict or maybe a Deluge or something like that. Um, just so that your turn 4 play is gonna be pretty powerful. So you're trying to search for the Emperor, Deluge, or Verdict to clear the way, clear the board, and hopefully have Narset stick on the board some more, and then maybe eventually you can blink her back with Yorion, which is the ideal sort of like scenario. So yeah, I still like her at 2. You can even cut her completely. I've seen a lot of builds just cut her off, but my personal preference is that I like her at 2. So we don't have as much counter spells in this particular deck. We have a lot of interactive removal and some, and in sorry, in the form of Thoughtseize and um, you know, March and Vanishing Verse, Drown Lock, Fatal Push. So our only choices of counter spells is either Absorb or Dolans Veto and Drown, I guess. Um, you could play Censor in the deck, but I feel like Censor is a lot weaker of a card in this three-color deck, so I decided to just cut Censor completely. Still keep the 4 Absorb. I think it might be better in this particular deck than it was in my blue-white control deck. I only say that sometimes because my blue-white control deck occasionally had issue with getting double blue and white on turn 3. With this particular man base, even though it's 3 colors, I think we should be able to support the Absorb by turn 3 and not have any issues with it. But the mana base I will definitely have to play with and see how if I like what I have right here. But I think I should be able to on turn 3 still have enough mana for Absorb. Um, and like I mentioned before, Absorb is great just because it keeps you alive, and so that you can play a long game. I prefer it over every other 3 mana counter spell. The only other one I might consider is like Saw It Coming or something like that. But even then, it's Saw It Coming is kind of like it's not a bad card, but um, if I were with Saw It Coming, most of the time you're still spending 3 manas to counterspell. I don't think you're gonna really have that much time to foretell Saw It Coming and then use it for 2 mana. I think most of the time you're just gonna leave it up for 3 mana and then use it at 3 mana. So if at that point I'd rather just play Absorb, even though it has a heftier casting cost than Saw It Coming, or like um, Sinister Surveil or something like that. Anyways, let's move on. Now, the other card that you could consider right now, I'm playing 2 Void Wren because I don't have any more rare wild cards to craft a third one. So I'm just playing the 2 just to try it out, and substituting the third Void Wren with Kaya's Oath, or sorry, Oath of Kaya. So the Oath of Kaya is good in the deck in the sense that it gives you a bit of healing factor, and it can be blinked with Yorion, so I guess that's the sort of the main appeal of it. I wouldn't want to play more than 2. It is a legendary enchantment, and so and it is 3 mana and it is kind of slow, so that's why I'm only playing the 1 copy. And honestly, if you have a third Wren, I think you might want to play a third Wren over that. Another potential 3 mana slot card that you could play would be Liliana the Veil here. I thought about it. I'm just not too sure if she'll do much good in the deck because I'm not really too focused on discarding cards per se. I don't really have any sort of graveyard synergy, and most of the times I want cards in my hand because I'm holding up counter spells and stuff like that. So I don't think I'll be able to uptick her all the time. Like I would add her if I feel like my deck can always uptick her safely or without nagging myself too much. In this particular deck, I don't think I'd be able to just slam her down and start upticking away. I think I would burn out my own resources too quickly, or not get value out of my own resources to make her very worthwhile. So I think she's not worth playing in this particular build. Like her edict effect is still great. Don't get me wrong. And if if you have her and like a Teferi Dominaria on the board, I think you just win from there because you're just eating cards away from your opponent's hand every turn while gaining 1 card. So I mean that seems like a cool synergy. But in the early stages of the game, I don't think I'd be able to be able to slam her down and start upticking with her and be able to protect her and all that. I think that's gonna be a little hard. So something you may want to consider if you want to try it out. But right now, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do Oath of Kaya for now, or possibly triple Void Wren. And yeah, Void Wren is what makes this deck better than just blue white, because for 3 mana you can just kill anything you want. Blue white has a horrible time dealing with 2 cards Planeswalkers and the goddamn Graveyard's Trespasser, because you cannot get rid of that thing effectively. Once someone puts a Graveyard Trespasser into play, you're basically praying that you have some sort of like board wipe, because otherwise, like you're gonna be trading like 3 cards for to remove it, and it's just not a good trade. So with Void Wren, because it can't be countered, you can target the Trespasser, remove it, not pay the ward costs. By not paying the ward costs, the ability of the Trespasser is going to try to counter Void Wren, but because it can't be countered, or because Void Wren can't be countered, it's just gonna kill the Trespasser. So, you know, perfect card against Trespasser. Also really good against Planeswalkers, because in blue white you only have like 2 ways of removing Planeswalker, and that's usually with like Teferi or Faithful Absence. You have absolutely no other way of removing Planeswalkers outside of just getting a bunch of Shark tokens and Samurai tokens to attack over them, and that is already difficult enough. Most Planeswalkers in the format can defend themselves, and your opponent's probably gonna have some sort of blockers or some sort of like other ways to remove your tokens. So attacking over a Planeswalker is not a reliable way to get rid of them. You can try to invalidate the Planeswalker. Maybe if you're playing against a Teferi and you resolve a Narset, you can kind of invalidate Teferi's uptick, which I have done a few times. But in the end, you still want to get rid of Teferi, off the board, or a Chandra, or a Sorin, or in this case nowadays it's gonna be Lily. And so if you have no way of getting rid of those efficiently, you're gonna be losing out on like you're just gonna be losing to their ults or something like that. And that's the one thing I didn't like about blue white, is just you have no ways of efficiently getting rid of any sort of Planeswalkers that resolve. Being an 80 card deck, you're not gonna always have counter spells in your hand. Chances are if they cast a Planeswalker, it's gonna resolve. And so you just need a way to just remove it. In Esper, that's why I like, because you have good efficient removal, and you also have ways of just killing threats out of your opponent's hands. So that's what I'm hoping the Thoughtsies will do, and I'm hoping Vanishing Verse and Void Wrens will take care of the Planeswalkers issues, and then everything else just kind of back that up. Moving forward, still got the staple of the 4 Emperor, Deluge, and Verdict. I really like Deluge in control decks. It's probably better than Dig Through Time, and probably better than Treasure Cruise, because you're not really filling your graveyard up really quickly, and Deluge is just great to cast on turn 4 at instant speed, and draw your outs to, like, with Verdicts, or draw your lands into your 5th land and play your Teferi. So that's what I like about Deluge. It's just great, and it's efficient. Flashback for 7, which I've done a few times. Just overall, probably the best sorry, I was about to say counter spell. Best draw spell in the deck. You could play something like the Multiverse card, draw 2 cards and stuff like that. I just don't like that, just because you draw 2 random cards, so it could be good or bad. The great thing about it is you can foretell it, but I'd rather just spend 4 mana and just dig through my deck a little bit more. And so that's why I like Deluge. And Deluge can play around something like a Narset, or if your opponent has something that hoses drawing, at least Deluge can kind of play around that. So that's what I like. Next off, just the best removal board wipe in the game right now, or in Pioneer in general. 4 mana, not much to say about that. For Teferi, the other 5th or 5 mana Planeswalker you could play is Ashiok, the is it the Dream Renderer? No, not the Renderer, the Ashiok. I think I'm spelling Ashiok wrong. Am I spelling it wrong? Yeah, I think I am. Can't remember how to spell Ashiok. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Ashiok, the Nightmare Muse, he's not bad. Back then, when I used to play Control Esper in Pioneer, or sorry, Historic, He was great to just make bodies on the board. He's great to clean up, um, you know, maybe a Shark Typhoon that's resolved, stuff like that. He's just return a card, put exiles it, um, you know, that sort of thing. And he's really good against token decks because if they play a token, you can target a token, kill a token, and force them to exile a card in their hand. So maybe play one copy if you wanted to. But because I'm playing the Emperor, I already have enough token generation, so I don't think I need Ashiot to be a token generator. So I might try him out later, but as of right now, I think he's Fort Fairy's better right now. So stick with that for now. We'll see as I play the deck some more. And next off, I got the one Farewell because I always like to be able to kind of reset the game sometimes, and Farewell just kind of is really good at doing that. It just resets the game, um, and just another Supreme Verdict essentially. But at 6 mana, it is kind of expensive, so just be wary. So I'm just playing the one copy just cause, um, and I always like having Farewell in at least the 80 card Yorion deck because it's kind of like your one of, and if you draw it, great. You always know that you have some sort of hope of resetting the game, and so not a bad inclusion into the deck. And then last off, I have 3 Typhoon. Still, puts a body on the board. Cycle it on turn 2 if you're missing your land drops. Just an overall great card. If you're able to play it as an enchantment and get the shark tokens flowing in, no way your opponent can beat you there. So I'm playing just a 3 copy because of the card quality and card choices we have in the deck. I don't feel like I need 4. You can even cut this card down to 2, honestly. It would be fine, or even cut it out completely if that's your preference. I still recommend at least 2 copies, to be able to cycle through your deck and draw your lands, hopefully. And that's why I'm playing 3 because I want some of that filtering ability in the 80 card deck to kind of filter into for my land drops, and we're way more inconsistent than we are compared to the blue-white Yorion deck. 'Cause the blue-white Yorion deck, we were playing 4 omens, 4 sharks, 4 sensor, so we can filter through our deck really really easily. But in this particular version, because we're playing better card quality, I feel like I didn't need to filter as much, but our mana base is still kind of greedy, and so yeah, just something to keep in mind. And yeah, just be wary. I'm gonna try out the deck, and I'll, depending on how the deck works and what the variance is, I might change those numbers up. All right, let's go ahead and go quickly through the mana base. Its mana base for this deck was very tricky to build. I kind of just saw some lists and kind of trying to mirror some of the lists I saw online, see what people were playing and their ratios, and I kind of just came up with what I thought was going to be at least a decent ratio for certain cards, and stuff like that. So I'll kind of talk about that really quickly here. So, Castle Arendelle, I always like having one copy just because it's 5 mana make 1/1 late game. It puts body on the board. Um, Works okay with the Emperor, stuff like that. So having the one of is not bad. Same thing with Gonjo here, having the one of. Use it as a land if you need to. Use it as a spell if you need to. Um, just flexible land. 1 planes in case we get memory, or in case we get Field of Rune, or we get Assassin's Trophy. It's just one of our ways to just get a land on the board. We don't really play any basics in this deck. Only 2, I think. Maybe 3 if you really wanted to. But there's no reasons to play basics outside of the fact that we want to prevent ourselves from getting filled or getting the Assassin's Trophy. That's why we play a couple basics. But outside of that, because it's a 3-color deck, you can't really afford to play too many basics in the deck. Then Castle Vantress, same idea as the Arendelle. Sometimes you want to just filter your draws, and you have a bunch of mana. Here you go, utility land. 2 Storm Giants. I think I might just go 1 Storm Giant and 1 Hive, because Hive does have a lower activation cost of 4 mana. So you're spending a total of 7 or 5 mana, including Hive. to attack and do some damage and remove a card from the graveyard. So I think that does provide some decent utility for the deck. Um, where like with Storm Giant, it requires like 6 mana to activate in an additional Storm Giant itself, so a total of 7 mana or 7 lands, I should say. And so it's got a heftier activation cost. And so I might just try 1/1. I don't have any other rare cards right now, so that's a card I might try out in the future. But for now, I just have the two halls as my man lands. You know, late game win condition if you have nothing left. Um, and 7/7 is always going to be good. Your other choice is the castle or the white one, where it becomes a 3/4 dragon. So that one's pretty similar to Celestial Colonnade in that sense. Activation costs I think of like 5 mana plus itself, so 6 mana total or 6 lands total. It's got flying, I guess, which is nice. I think the Hive is better for the mana cost and the fact that it's got vigilance. Or sorry, not vigilance. It's got menace, which is kind of pretty similar to flying or evasion in general. So, and it's a little bit cheaper to activate, and you can maybe block some stuff with it. It obviously doesn't have the survivability of the white land or the survivability of storm giants, but the fact that it can exile a card from a graveyard or defending graveyard can kind of help us deal with maybe like a memory deluge or a Croxa or something like that. Um, so I think its utility in a control deck might be better than just a 3/4 flying white dragon. Uh, yeah, so I'll think about adding that. That and it's also black, which we kind of want black mana in our first couple of turns anyways. So that's something else to think about there. And next off, we got just one island, and then yeah, I think those are the only two basics I'm playing. Because I think if people are gonna pop my lands, they're gonna go for my white or blue source rather than my black source. My black source, like I said, most of the cards in here are just one splash of black, so I don't really need black that much. Where like white and blue, sometimes they have double pips of white or double pips of blue, which is gonna hurt us more if they get rid of that. So that's why we have the plains and the island. Then we have Otawara. Yeah, it's just a good utility land here. And Takenuma. I don't know if it's good enough to play in a deck. I just play it just 'cause I have it. You could cut this for a swamp if you wanted to. Cut it for, I don't know, another man land. I figured maybe late game I can use it if I need to get back like a Teferi or need to get back a, um, Emperor or something like that. Because it does return a creature or planeswalker back to your hand, so that's kind of nice. So that's just the idea behind Takenuma. Late game card that you can use to at least get something back and be able to cast it next turn, hopefully. And then the rest of the mana base here are just gonna be dual lands. So we have 4 beach. The reason why we're playing beach is we don't need blue and white mana much during the first couple of turns as much, so we're able to afford waiting for blue white mana on turn 3. So yeah, beach is good for that reason. Glacial, same idea. Turn 2 and 3 is where we want to start playing our blue and white sources. Um, yeah, turn 1 we want to focus on black, so that's why we don't really have that many shock lands um, in the blue white color. Because turn 2 and 3, that's when we're gonna be dropping these for blue and white sources. Uh, turn 1 and turn 2, hopefully we're dropping more blue and black sources, since that's most of our um, cards are blue and black in the first couple of turns. Which is why we have 4 godless and just 3 fountains. You could maybe just do 2 or 3/3 maybe if you wanted to. I figured I'd rather be able to shock myself for black and be able to cast Thoughtseize or Fatal Push in the early parts of the game, and then play like my blue and white sources a little bit later. Yeah, same idea with the blue and black sources. You wanna be able to shock yourself for blue and black in the early games to play Thoughtseize Fatal Push, and then have at least maybe 1 pip of blue or white for cards like Drown, Banishing, Veto. And yeah, so that's kind of like the mana base, the general mana base there. Obviously, Ravine Tower is our gonna be our go-to land to play on turn one. If you draw it, just play it turn one, gives you all the colors you need. Cycle it later in the game if you're flooding out or something like that. But yeah, so 4 towers seems to be good. We can afford to play a bunch of check lands because we have a bunch of shocks and we have a bunch of trinomes here. I think we have a total of 14 name lands, 16 name lands, sorry, 16 types of lands here. So we have 4 tower, watery grave, so that's 8. You have 12 here, you have 14 here, and then you have 15 and 16 in the forms of plains and islands. So our check lands, in theory, should never come in tapped. So you could play more check lands if you wanted to. You can play more drowns. You can play more. I already maxed out on the glacials there. I wouldn't play the blue black check because it's not that great, especially by turn three. I don't think you need blue black by turn three anymore. Um, sorry, white and black. So the main color you want for sure is black on turn one, and or blue. Having you know having access to like one or the other is nice. Blue, mainly black, and by turn two you want at least one source of blue and one source of white. So that's the tricky part about the mana base here. So we're playing um, zero Field of the Rune because I don't think we can support that in this type of deck because we don't really have that many generic casting costs, like especially by turn two. So if you draw like a Field of the Rune, you're not gonna be able to cast like any of these like cards right here, um, or be able to support like double blue or one of each pips by turn three. So no Field of the Rune. It's in the 80 card deck. By adding Field of the Rune, our mana base variance is gonna be too high. Uh, of a cost. While the card is great and I liked it in like blue white, it's just not that great in a 3-color control deck when we're trying to assemble Esper by turn three. If you can get Esper color by turn three, then you're golden. If you can't, you're gonna be in some deep trouble. So no Field of Ruin. Therefore, we play less basics since we are not searching for our basics ourselves. Our basics should stay in the deck. There's only 2 of them. At 30, was it 34? Yeah, in a 34 land deck, in the 80 card deck. Hopefully we don't draw them, and hopefully, if our opponent's playing Assassin Trophy or if they're playing Field, then we can at least not lose out on our lands when they pop our lands or something like that. So yeah, so 2 basics. Most questionable cards could be Takenuma. I'm gonna have to test it out. I maybe want to change this for 1 Hive. Maybe you need 1 Swamp. I'm not too sure. I don't think I will need it because not too many decks are playing Field. Like the only decks that are playing Field are maybe Rakdos and Blue White Control, and that's it. Assassin's Trophy is pretty rare. I think blue black or green black decks are pretty rare in the format. Uh, it's usually red and black plus another color maybe. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna be playing against too many cards that are gonna require us to fetch our basics. So I think 2 is good for now. We'll have to test it out. Let's move on to the side deck real quick. I know this video is getting a little long, so side deck I don't have an idea of what to do with it yet. It's just kind of like a copy pasta of my blue white side, minus a couple cards to add in a couple of like black cards here and there. Yeah, like I said, I've put in the 4th Thoughtseize in case I felt I need it. Especially you do the 4th Thoughtseize against like control decks, control mirrors. Because this card will wreck control mirrors, because you'll be able to remove their counter spells or remove their Teferis or remove like stuff like that, and it's gonna enable you to see their hands so you can kind of play around their counter spells. So yeah, 4th Thoughtseize is good. Same idea with Gravedigger's Cage. Doesn't hurt us as much, so why not play it? Lots of cards are green and red, so Aerogus is pretty good. A bit of graveyard hate here. We don't really need more than 2, I think, because we have a couple other different graveyard hate cards. A couple of different counter spells. Cheap counter spells. Hard counter. And then a couple of our graveyard hate cards. We have in the form of Kaya, and we have a form of Gold Blank. Yeah, just good graveyard hate there. Another copy of Farewell if you're playing against a deck that goes wide or something like that, that you just need to always board wipe, or they're playing a lot of enchantments or something like that. Farewell is a good card there. Um, this is a maybe. Dream Trawler I don't think I need in this particular deck. I might take it out for something else. Or not sure what I would take out right now. But Dream Trawler just kind of just in there for now. Hull Break Horror I've always liked, so I think I'm always gonna keep at least one copy of this in my side. Um, especially against the control matchups. This card is game breaking once you resolve it. So yeah, I think Dream Trawler probably not gonna add too much value to this deck, so I think I might just take it out for something else. But for now, just have it at 1 here. Another card you could possibly play would be, I would think, what's that card? Thought Distortion. You can play Thought Distortion. You can play Narcissus Reversal. I opt not to play Thought Distortion because I'm already playing the Thoughtseize, so don't think I need it that much. If you're afraid of getting Narcissus or Thought Distortion yourself, then you play the Narcissus Reversal to kind of counteract that. So I don't know. I think I might just do that. I might just take out just the 1 right now because I don't think I'll be siding this in as much. Okay, let's go ahead and just do that. Let's take out this. Throw in another Narset Reversal here. Just the 1 of, yeah. So Narset Reversal just to help us, and it acts as another counterspell, I guess. And I don't think I'm playing Thought Distortion because I never really needed it. There's not that many control decks that float around anyways. And it's a 1 of 6 mana. Probably don't need it as much. But yeah, that's the deck. I will probably play a bunch of games with this deck soon enough. Right now I'm just kind of grinding for gold to purchase some more style cards, but I'll post some gameplays of this deck. Hopefully we'll be able to play it, see how it works, see if the mana base is good, what cards I want what cards I might want to cut or add in, and yeah, we'll go from there. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you next time.